Al Kadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Bava Kamma Daf Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara, we were talking about now Edim Zomemim D'Mamonahu. So listen. Says the Gemara, the top of the first word on the page, right? Edim Zomemim is Mamona. What does that mean? Edim Zomemim is Mamona. We were speaking about that we had how many Avot Melachot according to Rav Oshaya?
24, 12, היה שם השיטות כבר. אני לא יודע לקראת עולה.
13, חזק וברוך. Then we had Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia said how much? 24. How much was it on Mishnah? 4. חזק וברוך. Very good. So therefore, what happens now is like this. We have 4, 13, and then we had the 24. Remember that each one obviously adds, meaning the 13, he added on to the previous 4, and it included the previous 4, and the 24 included the 13, and then just added on to that as well. So each time they were adding, whether it's the Arba Shomrim, the 4 Shomrim, they were adding whether it's going to be the 5 Nizikim, they were adding whether the different things. Okay, now what we're going to say is as follows, yeah? Now what we're going to say is like this. Right? What's going to happen in the case of we started asking, why don't we mention Edim Zomemim? Why? Edim Zomemim, right? Edim Zomemim is Mamon. It's not Knas. So if Edim Zomemim is Mamon and not Knas, why don't we bring it up? It's Mamon, it's money. It's not Knas, it's not a penalty. You understand? The other things, if you remember, was a penalty. Kefel was a penalty. Bava Kamma 4 and 5 is a penalty. This is a penalty. And Edim Zomemim is Mamona. So if Edim Zomemim is Mamona, so why Be'emet? Why don't we learn it in Rav Oshaya? Because you remember we answered that Rav Oshaya did not learn the Rabbi because he says Mamona. He said we only learn Mamon. We don't learn Knas. So he didn't want to add in all the other ones, which was Knas. Okay? Everyone's with me?
One more time. Why?
There's the Gemara. Savalak Rabbi Akiva. They hold the Rav Oshaya holds like Rabbi Akiva. Tamar en meshanim al pi atzmam, which means that according to him, the entire concept of Edim Zomim is a knas. Why? Because an Ed Zomem will never pay on themselves, and therefore a knas a person will never pay on his own. So therefore, Rav Oshaya did not teach Edim Zomemim in his avot nezikim. Meaning in his avot, basically, in his concept. You know why? Because he held that Edim Zomemim is also knas. It's also knas. That was the shita of Rabbi Oshaya in the shita that he's going like Rabbi Akiva. So
it depends the type of.
No. Rav Oshaya is 13. No, Rav Oshaya is 13. Why don't you bring down 14, which is Edim Zomemim? Number 14 says no, because Edim Zomemim is knas, and he never taught knas. He only taught. How do you call this? He only taught mamon, not knas. Money, not penalties. Fines. There's a difference between paying a fee and paying a penalty. For example, you want to make a permit. So you have to pay a fine. You have to pay a application fee. But it's not a penalty. If you already did the job and now you're asking for a permit, now besides the fee, you pay a penalty. That's called a penalty.
So which one held from it?
So Rav Oshaya says, I only talk about money, not penalties, not fees, not fines. That's fees, not fines.
So the actual fee of the application.
Exactly, not the fine, not the penalty which is above.
Okay, so it's Rav Oshaya and then it's
Rabbi Chia. Exactly, Rabbi Chia taught all of it.
Okay, so if you do it right with the permit, so
yes,
it's not, you get the fine.
You get the fine.
Okay, so that's how you can find which one is which.
Exactly.
Okay.
Isava like Rabbi Akiva, ask the Gemara, if we hold like Rabbi Akiva, why don't we learn 2 cases of the shor? Number 1, shor dazik shor. Velitni shor dazik adam. You have a shor which is mazik a shor, and a shor which is mazik an adam. Why? The Tanam, we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva Omer, af tam shechaval be'adam shalem bemotar nezek shalem. Even a tam that he's going to come and he's going to be chaval be'adam, he's going to have to pay, right, the motar nezek shalem. So it comes out that according to Rabbi Akiva, it's going to be a difference between a shor tam which is mazik an adam and a shor tam which is mazik a shor. A shor, mazik a shor, has to pay a certain amount. A shor which is mazik an adam is a completely different vaydaber. I'll give you an example, right? You're right now, not you, somebody's right now driving, and they come and they get a car accident. There's going to be a very big difference between if they just destroyed property, whether it's the car or a driver and a human being. Once it becomes a human being and they're there, it's a completely different story. Like completely different story. You understand?
Between a fee and a fine.
Exactly. So not the fee and the fine. He just says that we should make a differentiation between a tam that gores on a shore and a shore with a ben adam. It's a completely different by the bed. It's a different story. And that different story is really be'emet shamayim va'aretz. It's like mamash different. So why do we learn it? Yeah. So he says, Hatabre Rabbi Akiva ligzeze. Rabbi Akiva, he broke his igrof, which means he was machlish et kocho. What he said. Titania was learned to the bright Rabbi Akiva Omer, Yachol avtam shechaval ba'adam yishalem min aliyah. It could happen that you're going to have a tam, that he's going to come and chaval ba'adam, yishalem also min aliyah, right? Tamulomar comes teach you, ya'aselo. What is ya'aselo? Shemigufo meshalem, ve'en neo meshalem min aliyah. Which means that he's going to pay from his body, but not from the aliyah, which means even though according to Rabbi Akiva, a shor that's mazik and adam, he has to pay nezek shalem, and not chetzi nezek. One more time. Until now, we always thought that when you have a tam, what's the difference between a tam and a muad? We said a tam is mishalem, chetzi nezek. A muad is mishalem, nezek shalem. So we thought that the difference is chetzi and nezek shalem. Comes Rabbi Akiva and he says, no, even a tam, if he gores or if he's going to damage a human being, he pays nezek shalem. He comes and he says, mikomakom, sometimes he's not going to pay all the nezek, but only the maximum of the value of the shor. And therefore, Rav Oshia comes and he says that when he did not count the shor, which is mazik and adam, because behemet, sometimes it's only going to be the maximum, which means like this. Sometimes, right, you have to pay an enormous amount because it's a human being. But sometimes there's a cap on the insurance. The cap on the insurance, once you get to that amount, they're not going to pay out $1 more because that's it. You already got the cap. So therefore, it all depends what you paid for. So therefore, what he comes and he says is this: even if according to Rabbi Akiva, a shor tam will pay nezek shalem, not chetzi, nezek shalem when he damages another human being, he only pays the maximum of his value. Meaning you cannot take more of the shore's value. The shore's value. So therefore,
and if she was pregnant as a woman also.
First of all, it's not going to always be smaller than the value of a human being. We're not talking about that he killed the human being. We're talking about that he damaged the human being. We're not talking about he killed it. He could be any type of a damage. So therefore, let's say he came and he damaged his arm. He broke his arm. Right? I'm talking about now. I'm talking about that he comes, right? And right now, let's say he can't work for a few weeks. No, he's going to become better. He broke his arm. I don't know what. So, okay, it's going to be a few weeks. But at the end of the day, right, there's a cap. What's that cap? The value of the shore. It cannot be more, meaning, again, remember, according to the other opinions, anyway, you're only paying half the damage. So if I'm going to come and I'm going to say, what's the damages? We're going to have an evaluation. It's going to be $5,000, right? It's not going to be that. You understand? No, you only have to pay half, $2,500. Here, though, what happens if the shore is worth, right, a certain amount? You cannot take above and beyond the shore. Meaning the shore is the cap. The shore is the maximum. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, why don't we learn about the ones, mefate, motzi shemra? They're also money. Somebody comes and he violates a woman. Why do you call it a knas? That's money. Right? He's going to seduce a woman. Or motzi shemra. That's money. Says the Gemara, manavsha. He says, nezek tanale. He comes and he says, Rav Oshia already taught nezek. The tsar, if it's tsar, tanale. He also taught it. Vim boshet, tanale. Vipgam, hainu nezek. So he comes and he says like this. What is the money that you're paying to a woman that you violated? Or what is the money that you're paying to a woman that you took out of Matzi Shemra or that you were seduced her? What is it? If it's nezek, it's already one of the nezek. We already learned nezek. If it's going to be bullshit, we already learned bullshit, embarrassment. If it's going to be tsar that she suffered, that she was crying, she was suffering, being violated or seduced, technically she's not really 100% suffering. But let's say it's even type of a, right? But let's say, but at the end of the day, in all these cases though, right? In all these cases, we already learned it. We learned nezek, we learned tzad, and if you're going to tell me it's a pgam, it's a defect is nezek. That is nezek. Well, what is nezek? Nezek is a defect. So what are you going to tell me then? So obviously, it's a knasa. And knasa, lo kamai, we're not talking about knas. Basically, that's what we're trying to say. We're trying to say, one second, if you're going to tell me right now that the money that you're coming and you're telling me that you have to pay money, what is that money? If that money is a nezek, Rav Oshaya already taught nezekim. He says nezek is nezek. If you talk bullshit, remember the 5 punitive damages, right? That was what we mentioned before in Rav Oshaya. You had 4 avot nezekin, 4 shomrim, and 5 punitive damages. The punitive damages had nezek, which is damage. It had bullshit, which is embarrassment, and it had tsar, which is suffering. So therefore, what are you paying for? It's not unemployment. When somebody comes and he's going to seduce a woman, exactly, it's already included. So therefore, what are you doing then? So obviously, it has to be a knas. It has to be something different. Because if not, it's already there. He already has nezek, tsar, and bullshit. So answers the Gemara, you're right. It's a knas. And knas we're not talking about. What about mitameh v'medameh v'menasech? When you come and you're going to make somebody's thing tameh. Imagine, he's a kohen. He's going to eat his truma. I come and I make his truma tmeah. Now he can't eat it. Wa'chalota. Right? Not literally, because he can't eat it, but that's it. So now what happened? I was just mitameh his oath. No. Right? Yeah, he comes and he says, right, what happens? He comes and he says, now, I was just mitameh his truma. Lav dafka him, it could be mitameh any other things as well. Right? The midameh. What's midameh? Imagine right now Mordechai comes and he has his things that he already separated to masrot. I come and I throw tevil back into it. And I was like, oh, well, now which one's what? Now he has to separate again. Balagan. What's minasech? I come and I make his wine. Right? I come and I take, the goy, and I tell him, pick it up, enjoy yourself. Boom. Minasech. So in all these cases, it should also be mamona. Why is it not brought down? I obligate to pay the money. Says the Gemara. Why don't we learn it? Answers the Gemara. Hezek she'eno nikar shme hezek. Hatana lenezek. Ve'i hezek she'eno nikar lo shme hezek. Havle knasa. Uve knasa lo kamaydi. He comes and he says this. I don't know if you remember, we spoke about it also on Monday night. Right? On Monday night, we were giving a shiur to the young professionals. And we were speaking about, is eavesdropping considered, yes, right? You're invited. Yeah, he says, is eavesdropping, right, considered, is eavesdropping, right, is eavesdropping, yeah? He comes and he says this. He says, is eavesdropping considered a nezek or not? Yeah, he comes and he says, is eavesdropping considered a nezek or not a nezek? Yeah. He comes and he says like this. If you remember, we were speaking about is eavesdropping considered damage or not? Meaning I'm going to come, I'm going to hack his phone, and now everything that he says, I'm listening to him. Right? So basically what happens now is like this. So there's a concept called hezek, which is nikar or not nikar. Hezek, which is, for example, I came and I was mitameh truma. Is it nikar that he has truma tmeah?
No.
No. If I don't tell, it's recognizable. Recognizable. For example, if I don't tell him anything, he has no idea. There's nothing cooking. Right? These 3 things don't nikar. So says the Gemara. If you're going to tell me that a hezek which is not nikar is still considered a nezek, we already learned nezek. Nezek was one of the 13 things of Rav Oshaya. And if hezek nikar is not a hezek, so then it's a knasa. In knasa, we didn't learn. We're in Rav Oshaya. No, he's saying Imanasha. If it's nikar and it's considered a hezek, sorry, if it's not nikar and it's still considered a hezek, hezek shenu nikar dain nikra hezek. So Rav Oshaya laman nezek. One of the 5 punitive damages is a nezek. It's not considered a hezek. So what is it? The knas. Knas, Rav Oshaya lo lamad. Says the Gemara, Leima kasava Rabbi Chia, hezek shenu nikar shmezek. So it comes out that Rabbi Chia now learns that hezek shenu nikar is not considered a nezek. Why? Teishme hezek, atal nezek. Because if it was a nezek, you already learned nezek. Meaning like this. Rabbi Chia has 24.
Yeah.
One of the 24, is it nezek?
Yeah.
Yes. If you hold that hezek she'eno nikar shme nezek, which means something which is not recognizable, it's called nezek, so I don't need to bring then the mitameh medameh because it's already nezek. It's already there.
You take out 3.
Exactly. Take out 3. So obviously, according to the Bechia, hezek shenu nikar, lav shme hezek. It's lav shme hezek. Because if not, then I already. So says the Gemara, no. Tana hezeka de minkera, tana hezeka de lo minkera. The Bechia wanted to differentiate between a hezek, which is nikar, and a hezek shenu nikar. You're right. These last 3 of mitameh, medameh, menasech are hezek shenu nikar, which is nezek. But he wanted to differentiate. He wanted to tell you guys, Rabotai, you have a nezek, which that's nezek nikar, and you have hezek shenu nikar. You're right. Hezek shenu nikar is still nezek. But I wanted to teach it to you. I wanted to show you that there still exists such a thing as hezek shenu nikar. So don't bring me a proof, Rabbi Chia, sheze lo nikra hezek. Ze ken nikra hezek. But I didn't. I wanted to teach it separately. I wanted to show you there's A and B. You're right. They're both nezek. But there's a nezek nikar and nezek shenu nikar. Right? That's what he wanted to show you. And that's what he said. Of course he could. That's what he just said. Bishma letana didan. I understand according to our Tana. Tana minyan al-miyute d'Ravoshia. Meaning like this. Why did our Mishnah say arba'a avot nezikin and then tell you 1, 2, 3, 4? Why didn't it just tell you avot nezikin 1, 2, 3, 4 without saying the number? You could count. Baruch Hashem, people could count. No, Baruch Hashem, yeah, 1, 2. Especially after they write it, they can actually count. They go 1, 2, 3. They know how to count. So he counts and he says it this. So he counts and he says it this. He counts and he says 1 second. If right now, right, a person knows, right, why are we mentioning a number? So you know why? When we mention a number, it's coming to exclude something. So when I tell you there's 4 cases, it's coming to exclude another case. So our Mishnah is coming to tell you 4 to exclude Rav Oshia that has 13. Rav Oshia Tanya Lemina Lemute. Rav Oshia also taught 13. Why did he say 13? Just say Avot Nezikin. Mention the numbers, like mention the and then it's 13. Count, says the Gemara, because it comes to exclude Rabbi Chia. Minyana de Rabbi Chia. Why did Rabbi Chia have to tell you 24? Meaning, obviously, if I'm going to tell you that there's 24 Avot Nezikin, and then I tell you the number, it's coming to exclude something else. What am I coming to exclude? So answers the Gemara, Lemiyute moser umefagel. There's a moser and a mefagel. You know what a moser is? What's a moser?
Moser.
What's a moser? No.
Moser.
Mavir ma. If I come and I tell you he's a moser, what's a moser?
The person who goes and
an informer. What is an informer?
Very good.
He gives the property of a Jew to a goy. Doesn't matter whether it's the government, right? Doesn't matter whether it's whether it's going to be.
Informers don't give the property; it's only information.
But that's giving over the property. When I come and I say that he's got something which is prohibited,
but if it's not only about property, but machine or something else, like he's a trader.
Okay,
a person that's Moser cannot go up to the Torah.
We put him in a pit and we don't bring him up, right? There's a whole thing about it, right? So what is that? A Moser? A Moser comes, right? And we actually come and we put mamash. Okay, that's a Moser, right? So he comes and he says, that's a Moser. Moser mamon chavero. Are you listening? Mamon chavero leoved kochavim. Next one, mefagel. Yeah, not mefagel. Mefagel. What is mefagel? Right? He's a Kohen. But he's being mefagel the korban of his friend. Pigul. What's the pigul? Right? You come and you make pigul. So for example, he comes, right? And he comes and he says, for example, I'm going to come and I'm going to show this guy. This guy, I didn't like what he did to me. Right? So he didn't like a certain thing, whatever it was. So what happened? He comes and he says, this guy's bringing me a korban now. What am I going to do? I'm going to have in mind that I'm not going to eat it right now. I'm going to eat it, later on. He's making pigul. It's called mefagel. Of course not. Huh? Pigul. Pigul is if you're going to take a korban, that you're going to have in mind that you're going to eat it, right? Or do something outside of the proper time.
Or you could have somebody in mind.
Outside of the proper time.
You ask a question, you can't even hear the answer.
Did you hear?
קורבן פסול. פסלת את הקורבן. יאללה, בוא נמשיך.
Yeah.
Tu dois faire quelque chose dans un certain temps.
Okay.
Tu le
Next.
pousses
So says the Gemara,
Le Kohanim, il doit manger le fromage de telle heure.
Belitni.
C'est quoi, je vais le manger de telle heure.
Exactly. I'm going to eat it tomorrow, or I'm going to bring it tomorrow. I'm going to sprinkle the blood at another time. Okay. So says the Gemara, yeah, Belitni. Right? How do we actually learn them? Why don't we learn this too? Yeah.
When they shoot the terrorists, it's called pigou.
פיגוע.
Belitni. So why do we learn these two? Learn Moser and learn the Mefagel. So he comes and he says, Bishlama Mefagel, the coaching lo kamairi.
רונן
He
חכם.
comes and he says, right? The coaching, we're not talking about coaching, right? Ela Moser.
בבקשה.
Now we're talking about a Moser.
טבלה.
Maita Malotani.
Yeah.
So why didn't we learn about it then? Meaning like this. By Pigul, we didn't want to speak about it because the Pigul is coaching. So we don't want to talk about it. But by a Moser, why don't we learn the Moser? So he says, Shane Moser the Dibura. Of Dibura lo kamadi. What is a Moser? Did everyone understand what a Moser is?
Yes.
A Moser is an informant.
רק בדיבור.
How does he do it? With his mouth.
Okay.
So with the mouth, we're not talking about that. Meaning we're not talking about that a person came and they did something with their mouth. So that's a nezek, which is done with the mouth. We didn't talk about that. So says Imra, motzi shemra. Motzi shemra is also with the mouth. Right? Motzi shemra is with your mouth. Right? The dibura. Yeah? And he says, who, right? It is dibura. The ketani, we did learn it. Answers the Gemara, dibura dibe maasehu. No, there, it's a dibur that has a maaseh. Right? Because he's not going to be chayav l'shalem motzi shemra unless he comes and he has the ta'ana that he had relations with her. Meaning there had to be a maaseh and then a dibur. A lot of people are only dibur, right? But then there are people which they're maaseh as
אבל
well,
הוא עד, הוא לא
right?
יכול לעשות כלום.
So what's that ed?
אז מה
One
הוא
more
צריך? אני
time,
לא מבין.
right? A person comes. What is motzi shemra?
בדיבור, הוא מוציא שם רע לבן.
A motzi shemra? No.
מה?
What is motzi shemra?
מה מוציאים שם רע?
It says the Gemara, edim zomim dibura dele b'masehu. Edim zomim. What is edim zomim? We spoke about the guy. He was only speaking. there was no maaseh. What?
It is motzi shemra.
Okay, if it was not true, it's motzi shemra. If it was true, then not, or whatever it is. But basically, right, edim zomim. Answers the Gemara, hata mafal gav dele b'maaseh, even though it's not a maaseh, rachmana karil maaseh. The Torah called it a maaseh. Why? Tichtiv va'asitem lo kasher zamam la'asot la'achiv. Meaning, even though he didn't do an action, and it was only pitputim, it was only speaking, the Torah called it an action. The Torah came and called it an asiyah. So therefore, even though you're right, technically speaking, right? Even though technically speaking, you're right, it was dibur. No, the Torah called it an action. Okay, fine. So now the Gemara is going to come and say as follows, right? Baruch Hashem here in the bottom, by the way, you have all the avod Rav Oshia and avod Rabbi Natan, the Rabbi Chia, sorry, right? And right, you have the limud, right? And all these things, okay? So it says the Gemara,
הנה, ברוך השם,
Bishlema letana didan, right? זה לא Gemara. Right, Bishlema letana didan. I understand our Tana, right? They understood that if a person wants to learn, they have to write, right? Bishlema letana didan. So I understand that according to our Tana, Tana avot mikal di katoladot. When we learned the arba avot nizikim, they're toladot. But according to Ruchia and Rav Oshia, miklal di katoladot, toldot. If I call them avot, has to be a toledo. If I tell you that you're a father, that means obviously that what? There's a child. Lav davka son, be a daughter. There has to be a child, right? So therefore, right? You're always looking for boys, right? So he comes and he says, but the question is, what are the toldot then? So Amar Rabbi Avu says Rabbi Avu, kulan ke'avot leshalem mimetav. Do you know that when we said avot, right? They were teaching us that the avot of the Mishnah is to teach that they pay from the best, but not that they're avot mamash, because they don't have toladot. Meaning, in these cases, there's no toladot, right? But it's like an avot. Okay, it's like the avot. So my tama, what's the reasoning? Atya tachat netina yeshalem kesef. Now, the truth is, the reason when we brought down Rav Oshaya and Avod Rabbi Chia here on the bottom was not to tell you the 11 of Rav Oshaya, the 13 of Rav Oshaya, and the 24 of Rabbi Chia, because that, even I don't want to say everyone will know that. You don't need that. What it is to do the limud. What's the limud? Listen carefully, right? You've got 4 different words. Tachat, netina, yeshalem, kesef, right? So what does that mean? If you look, right, the Gemara does not even actually explain it. It just tells you that we're learning it from a gzera shava from it. So that's why here, right, Rashi is going to bring you down all the limudim. And here you have this entire chart, not to teach you the avot, because that, it should have been already before on the previous stuff when it brought down, right? It didn't bring it down there because it was obvious. Take a piece of paper, write it down if you want to remember it, but you already have it. You don't need it. So why do we bring this down? This chart is because how do you have the limud? So I'm not going to go through the entire limud, but I'll explain to you the limud. We have 4 words. Tachat, netina, yeshalem, kesef. It's a gzera shava. So if you pay attention, go to the first one. The first one, shomer chinam, shoel, shomer sachar, socher, and right, so you have the different limudim, meaning Rav Oshaya came and he told you that there's going to be 11, besides the first 4. The first 4 have avot and toladot. The other ones, they don't have toladot. So they're only avot. So why are they called avot? He says, no, avot, that they're like the avot, they pay mimetav, from the best. How do you learn it? Shomer chinam, shoel, and shomer sachar, they learn it from Yeshalem. When it uses the terminology Yeshalem, that teaches you have to pay from the best of the properties. Nezek, you learn from the tina. Tsar, ripui, shevet, you learn from the tina. Tsar is from tachat. Ripui, shevet from the tina. Boshet from tachat. Then you go to the next one, right? Kefel, Yeshalem. Bava Kamma Daf, Yeshalem and tachat. Ganav, Yeshalem. Gazan, netina. Edim, zayim, tachat. Meaning, each one, there's 4 different words, key words. I have to plug and play. So every single time we're going to speak about, let's say, edim zomim. So he says, tachat, asher asita, tachat, when it uses the terminology tachat, I come and I say, you have to pay nezek shalom, you have to pay mimetab, from the best. How do you learn that? Because it says tachat, right? Mimetab is from the best, right? Now, when I come and I say, for example, mefateh, it says kesef. So now that he uses the terminology kesef, you have to pay from the best, right? That means these are the 4 categories of like terminologies. That the second they say it has a key word, boom, pay me mitavaretz. You have to pay for the best. Which one? Lo are ashor ke are mave. Do you know that the shor is not like the mave? Says the Gemara, my Kama, what are you talking about? What does it mean that the shor is not like the mave? So we already had how many opinions? What was mave? 2. We either had that shen, which was shita of
the description of the
one second. So one more time, we had in our Mishnah, right, mav'eh, and after mav'eh we had a machloket Rav and Shmuel, whether recording that it's shen or an adam. Right now, we asked later on, maybe it's also water. We disproved it. Maybe it's also fire. We disproved it. Why did we disprove the water? Right, or why do we disprove the fire? Because it didn't make sense in the psukim. Right, for example, the fire we actually disproved because if fire was mav'eh, so what's mavir? Hever, the hever is already fire. So each one we disprove. So therefore, it's either one or the other. It's either going to be shen or ben adam. So now we just said that the ox is not like the mave. What does that mean? Why don't we the Torah just write 2? Why don't we just write 1? And that's it. Hadar Amar, and afterwards the Mishnah is going to tell you that you cannot learn one from another, which means we would have had a havamina that really be'emet, why can't we just write? Why do we have to write down both mazikim? Just write down 1 and that's it. So the Gemara is teaching you no, because you cannot learn one from the other. That's why, meaning when we came and we said that the shor is not like this, or all these things, it was purposely in order to show you that you cannot compare the 2. So therefore I cannot learn both. So that way I have to write both of them in the Torah. I need it in the Torah because I cannot learn one from another, because they're not compared. Okay? Now, the ox and the mave, they have ruach chaim. Whether you learn mave, whether the shen or an adam, he's a ruach chaim. He's got a life. He's got an neshamayim. He's got a living aspect. It's not an inanimate object. So my Kama, what does it mean? Amar of Mishashe Nishmed Rabbi Akimaduzum say Hamud Bet says the Gemara Lichtov Rachmana Tarte Beteti Idach Minayu. Why don't we just learn 2 and learn the rest from it? Meaning the Torah could have write down Shor and Mave, and then you could have learned down, for example, Esh from both of them together. So Hadamar, that's why it tells you again the same thing. You cannot learn one of them from both of them. Yeah? He comes and he says like this. So he comes and he says, Amar le Rava. Rava comes and he says, Vikulu ki shadit bor minayhu. And in all these cases, when you're going to take the bor from it, at yakulu b'mahatzad levar mikeren. Do you know like this? Do you remember that, for example, I want to learn from one thing. If you only ask me one question, you disprove I can't learn it from anymore. So I want to learn from another thing. So I come and try to learn from another thing, and I can't learn it from it. But what do you do afterwards? What do? You do if you cannot learn from a kal v'chomer from one, and you can't learn from a kal v'chomer from another, what do you learn? Not a gzera shava from a. No. What do you learn? Doctor, what do you learn? Not from a pasuk, but rather a binyan. Binyan av. From a tzad shaveh. What is a binyan av? He comes and says, what's a binyan? Yeah, he comes and he says, he comes and he says, binyan av. What's a binyan av? A binyan av, he comes and he says like this. What's a binyan av? He comes and he says like this. He says a binyan av means that I cannot learn it from one, I cannot learn it from another, but I have a common denominator. And the common denominator I can learn from there. Now you're right. If I'm going to analyze on each one, it's not comparable, but they both have a common denominator, and then they can learn. So says the Gemara, right? He comes and he says this: Amar Rava, the kulu, all the avot zikin. When you're going to put the av of the border between them, right? Atia kulu, you could have come and learned all of them from matzad, right? From the matzad shaveh shemahen. So, for example, if the Torah would have written only bor and keren, so we would have learned the chiyuv of the other ones, whether it's regel, shen, adam, and esh, and everything from tzad shaveh. If the bor endar kol alechel imkomo lazik, and you're still chayav to be on the nezek, kol sheken on regel, shen, adam, ve'esh, shedar kam lalechet ulazik, right? Now you're going to ask the bor. There's no other person there. When you made it, it wasn't to damage. He come and he said, no, you got the keren, which is made to damage. So he come and he says, except for keren, there's one difference from the keren. The keren is not muad at the beginning. You remember we learned that keren is the only one that is not muad at the beginning. Everything else it's muad at the beginning. Meaning a human being damages. Can he come and he say, yeah, but I'm a tam? You know, you're I don't know what. You know, a tam. Tam doesn't apply to a human being. Tam doesn't apply to a pet. Tam doesn't apply to the only one that a tam applies to is keren. That's the only thing. Right? But according to the mandamar, it says adra, but the opposite. Keren adiva, keren is better. Shekanatu lazik, that he has a kavanah to be mazik. Afilu keren amiyatya. Even keren you can bring it. Remember, keren has kavanah to be mazik. Does a pit have kavanah to be mazik? Does a fire have kavanah lazik? Right? Does shen have kavanah lazik? No. All these things, keren. So he comes and he says, so why did the Torah write it then? To be mefaret all the different halachot. Every single av and av and av, to teach you all the different halachot of those av. Keren, however, though the keren comes to be mechalek between a tam and a muad. Shen v'regel lepotram b'reshut rabim. Shen v'regel comes to exempt you from reshut rabim. Meaning, if the animal comes in reshut rabim and starts eating produce, he's patur. Why? It's public domain. What are you putting something in a public domain? It's your fault, right? Well, what do you want? You know. Then he comes and he says, Bor niftorat kelim. Bor is to be poter the kelim from the zikim, which is going to be on. Okay, the Gemara is going to learn it. As it says there in the Gemara, the pasuk says in Mishpatim, "V'nafal shama shor or chamor." Only on balei chayim that fall into a pit are they going to be chayav, not on kelim, right? And according to Rabbi Yehuda, the mechayv al niske kelim bebor. But according to Shidat Rabbi Yehuda, that he says you're going to be chayav on niske kelim bebor liftor bo et adam. It's going to exempt an adam. Right? Why? Because basically the Adam is the balabor, right? That he's going to, that means if a person dies within it, right? Then he says over here, Adam nechayvo arba dvarim. Why do we bring down Adam? To be obligating him in 4 things, meaning that he has to pay the 4 things besides the damages. Because remember, even a pit will pay damages, but they don't have to pay for the tsar, for the embarrassment, for the unemployment, and for the hospital bills and the medicine bills, right? They don't do that. A human being, they do. Esh liftor bo tamun. Esh, you're going to be patur, something which is tamun. Meaning, if a fire goes into a person's field and it burns something, and all of a sudden I come and I say, you don't understand, inside of that dog house or whatever it is, there was hidden $10,000. I'm going to say, Ibn Shalom, why did you do that? No, I purposely wanted to do that. It was hidden, right? Nobody would ever look for it there. I hid it over there. The fire comes and destroys it, I'm patur. Because you're only obligated on what the fire comes and consumes, what's be'en, not what's tamum. The Gemara is going to learn it obviously later on. Why? What? Like, how does that make sense? But that the Gemara is going to learn. But there, that's why he brought down esh. So ask the Gemara, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, that he says you are going to be chayav on nisket tamum be'esh latuye, what is coming to include? And so the Gemara latuye yichachani lo v'sichsecha v'nav. It's coming to include that if the fire came and it started, making it, how do you call it? He's going to be chayav. That means even though it's normal, it's not normal. The karka navanim linazek be'esh. You're still going to be chayav on the nezek if it's going to be on a fire or on these things. You're also going to be chayav and all of these things as well. So that's why we mentioned all these things. Even though you learned it,